Welcome to The Pivot Point, stories of courage, resilience, and reinvention. I'm your host, Jessica McGann, coach, producer, and creative, whose mission is to normalize the human experience, ignite the soul, and move you from feeling limited to limitless. Stories connect us, and my hope is that within this series, you will find at least one story that resonates with you on a deep, personal level. One that speaks to your soul or your current situation that will motivate you to keep moving forward, inspire you to make bold, brave choices in your own life, and help you feel less alone in the process. September is Suicide Awareness Month. And trigger warning, today's episode includes honest conversations about suicide, self-harm, and eating disorders, so viewer discretion is advised. In today's episode, I speak with Kelly Helmick, who takes us through her years of working in a highly toxic work environment that took a major toll on her mental well-being and eventually led to a 74-hour hold at her local hospital for suicide watch. This moment forever transformed her outlook on life and work, and I'm grateful that she's here with me today to vulnerably and powerfully share her story. Today, Kelly has transformed her pain and healing from this toxic work environment into a tool to inspire and assist others in starting their own businesses. Kelly is a business coach for online service providers who are also asking themselves, where do I start? Or what do I do next? Her no BS approach has helped freelancers ditch the bandwagon of creating a business like everyone else's and embrace their true passion. She believes that doing what you love while being 100% yourself is the best way to build a successful, long-lasting business. And honestly, I completely agree. Before we dive into today's episode, please know that if you or someone you love is struggling with suicidal thoughts, Talk Suicide Canada is available for your call 24/7 at 1-833-456-4566 or text HOME, HOME, to 741-741 for a free confidential conversation with a trained counselor at any time of day. Life is freaking hard, but you don't need to navigate it alone. All right, without further ado, let's dive in. I am so excited to welcome you, Kelly, to this podcast. This conversation is one that is very near and dear to my heart and one that I'm really excited to bring to the masses as I experience some workplace trauma myself, and the mindset and thoughts and meaning I added to that really was a dark place that I think we're not alone in exploring or experiencing. And what I've noticed is so many people just stay stuck in those workplaces, but you stepped out of it after you reached a dark place. And I'm just so excited to have this conversation with you.
It's a super important conversation to have, and I'm so glad that you've invited me here to talk about it. And also that, I'm not excited that you've had similar experiences, but I am excited that you've been able to take the steps to get away from those as well.
Yeah, and it's not easy, is it? It's a journey. It's a personal journey as much as it is a workplace and career journey.
Yeah.
So why don't you start off by telling us where you were at before that first pivotal moment? What was your day-to-day life like? How were you experiencing life at work, mentally, physically, emotionally? Where were you at?
Yeah, so I think it's important to start this journey by talking about kind of the massive difference in my personality versus the personality I needed in order to survive in my job. Okay. So I am an introvert. It may not come across like that, but when they're talking about something really passionate, I become super extroverted. Yeah. But I don't have the ability to, say, talk for 8 hours straight and be social for 8 hours straight. And that's exactly what I had to do at my job. So I worked in a call center. I've been working there for about 3.5 years, up to my pivotal point. And I was in a department where we were dealing with fraud. So there were people constantly coming in on the line who were upset, who were sometimes aggressive, sometimes emotional, sometimes just really even keel. But it was still a constant struggle to stay on top of those emotions and stay for myself in a very calm place when someone's like screaming at you on the phone. So especially when I'm not comfortable talking all day anyway, and then having that on top of it and mounting on top of that even was a very, I don't want to say catty, but kind of, it's a very high school-esque environment in the work environment. So very cliquey, there's a boys club, and the boys club gets all of the promotions, even though I was taking all of the calls. And I'm not exaggerating there. I was taking like 36 calls a day, and some of the boys club were taking 8, and they were still getting promoted above me. So it was a very toxic work environment overall.
On so many levels. Like it sounds
So
like not only like in the office itself, but in the work itself, because all of this aggression and anger is being directed to you. And it's hard not to absorb that.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not trained or practiced in separating yourself. And we're never trained that. Like no one teaches us that in school, which they should.
Right. So I really had to become a completely different person. I had to hide my bubbly. I had to be an extrovert all day long. I had to sink into the background so that I wasn't honestly picked on by some of the other people, because that had happened to some of the other women in my team. And I was just, I don't even recognize who that person was. And it's one of the things in my business that I speak so often about, is just being authentically you at all times, because I was not me for probably 6 years when I was in the corporate world. And it brought me to this place of deep depression that I'm still struggling to sometimes get out of.
That is such a hard place to thrive in. And were you even consciously aware at that time that you were masking? Were you aware that you were putting on a front, or did you do it on purpose? Like were you aware of it?
It's hard. Maybe.
It's
Definitely hard. Now I'm 100% aware of it. But this is kind of going even before that.
That's okay. Let's go back there.
So I started at after college, I started a job where it was a small business, family run. And I was super excited because it was my first job out of college. I was getting an actual paycheck, that wasn't just from like hosting at Chili's or something. And at first it was a good place to work. It was a good environment. And then pretty quickly, the second I started speaking my mind and being me a little bit, once I got more comfortable, I was literally told by my boss, "You think too much."
I'm sorry, you speak too much?
You think too much.
You think too much. I feel like that's worse. That's might even be worse.
Yeah. That is when I started to say, oh, okay, I need to dial it back. And then there are a few other instances where in a different department, I was promoted in all of my jobs, I was promoted within 6 to 9 months.
Wow.
So so I'm not saying that as a place of like high and mighty or arrogance. I'm saying this was the reality for me. I was promoted very quickly because I understood the jobs and performed that at a high level very quickly.
What I'm hearing is, and because I think this is what I experienced too, is there is a difference between belonging and fitting in. Yeah. And belonging is a space where you get to be authentically who you are with people who accept you with who you are. And fitting in is changing who you are to fit the space that you are in. And it sounds like you were trying to fit into this space.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, you didn't even know to consciously question that yet at that time, because again, we're not taught to question that. We're taught to, oh, that's how society works. There's a structure. There's all these pressures from society. I need to fit into this box. I want belonging. So I will mask and I will do what I need to do to fit into that space. Is that fair to?
I love how you define that, because that's like the best way that I've ever heard of defining it. But that's
I
exactly
wish I
what
could
it
take
is.
full credit for it, but Brene Brown, I think I heard it on like a clip in a TikTok somewhere. And I was just like, that has to live in me. That has to be a message that I continue to share because it's so spot on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what it was. I was trying to fit in. And there was a point where I was actually brought into HR because of this whole training incident. And I admit I was young, I cried, and I did not understand what they were talking about. And I had no idea how to handle that, because it was my first professional
Yeah.
experience.
And when you say you're young, like how young were you?
Oh, I graduated at 23, so I would have been like 24, 25 at that point. So like not like a baby young, but it being my first job,
You were
it's
young still.
intimidating. Yeah,
100%.
yeah. So I was brought into HR and I was told, basically like, you have to stop doing this. You're, oh my gosh. So I was told you have to stop doing this. And I was told that some of the sales reps who I was speaking with are taking me, my tone offensively. And I was told you have to change the way that you're speaking to people. Cool. I haven't talked about this in a while.
Okay.
And after that meeting, I changed who I was completely. I came into work the next day and I just I said, I put on this face and I said, hi, how are you? Hope you had a good weekend, have that little bit of chat.
Yeah.
And then I sat at my desk and did my job. And then when my job was done, I didn't ask for more work because I was done pretty quickly. Because sometimes, like, we had a heavy workflow, sometimes not so much. So sometimes you just sit at your desk for an hour waiting for more contracts to come in or whatever it was. So I just sat at my desk. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't socialize. I didn't go out to lunch with anyone. And that's how it was until for about a year later, until I left that company. And I remember one of my managers not pulling me aside, but seeing me in the parking lot and saying, I'm really proud of how you're handling it. I was like, okay, I'm doing something right. But I also thought to myself, wow, this sucks because I'm not this person. I'm being this quiet, docile, don't speak up, don't think, don't talk person.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to keep my head down so that I don't get fired.
And even as you speak about it, the Kelly that entered this conversation who was vibrant and lit up, as you bring yourself back to this place, I can really get this sense that you were just having almost like maybe an out of body experience. Like you were just a shell of who you were. Like it's like you flipped a switch and you turned Kelly off and you became this robot that you needed to be in order to survive in this space.
Yeah. And a lot of that continued into my next job. Not all of it. I was able to meet some great people, some people who are still friends today. So I was able to come out of my box to an extent. But then I changed teams as I was promoted a few times. And I got into the position that ended up ending me.
So you've received this promotion and the workload is piling on, I assume, even more so. And the responsibility is getting higher. So what happened during this period of time?
Yeah, so I was on that team, which was very toxic. And I was taking on more and more calls and being consistently aware that I was being passed up for taking on more work, even though I had the capacity for more. And at that point, I stopped trying so hard. I stopped trying to be the star employee and was like, well, I'm going to get the same bonus as the person who's only taking 8 calls. So I am going to stop being as efficient. I'm just going to be an even keel worker. And I also started to call into work a lot.
Like sick? Like, I'm not coming in today?
Yeah. Because it just wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth the burnout that I was facing. And at the time, I didn't know that term. I didn't know that that's what was happening.
Oh, yeah.
I was consistently getting sick with sinus infections and ear infections, and most of which I've barely gotten since leaving. So it's telling me that all of that stress was causing my immune system to break down and causing it or making it very simple for me to get more sick, which made me call out even more.
Yes. I am really passionate about the topic of stress as someone who has also come from a really stressful work environment. We're deeply unaware of how dangerous stress is to us physically and mentally. And it can lead to mental illness, physical illness, disease, and cancer. So you explained a little bit, you were getting sick. What else were you feeling in your body that was unwell, that just wasn't feeling good? Was there anxiety? Was there nausea? What else were you experiencing?
I was having panic attacks. It got to a point where if I didn't know what I was wearing to work, I couldn't find something to wear to work. I also have some sensory struggles. So if something feels wrong, then it can cause a panic attack. And that was happening on a very consistent basis, to where I would get ready for work and it's an outfit that I had worn, a bajillion times, but that day it didn't feel right. And I had to take it all off in a rush because it didn't feel right. And then I would just lay down on my bed crying. And then I would call into work because I didn't have the capacity to move beyond that. It was toward that point that I was thinking about self-harming. It was inconsistent, but it was getting more progressive. And I remember one night where I had a knife in my hand and I had to throw it on top of the cabinet because I knew that if I didn't get it away from me, and I threw the scissors up there, I threw the other knife up there, I threw it all up there. I was just like,
I'm now picturing you in your kitchen just throwing utensils onto the top of the.
Seriously. I was like, okay, if it's out of sight, if it's out of easy reach, then I won't do anything. So it's like, toss that up there, scissors, toss that up there. Okay, we're good. And I took the dog for a walk because it's so therapeutic.
Oh, dog walks are so good for that, getting outside. But it's so normal to feel so trapped that quitting, it wasn't quitting that was the answer for you in that moment. It was, oh, I don't belong in this earth anymore, or I can't, this is the only way to get out of this pain. Leaving the job was not part of it. Because why? What would, if you were to think back to your mindset then, what would it have meant if you had to walk away from that job at that point, do you think?
Well, I owned a condo, so I wouldn't have been able to pay my mortgage. I wouldn't have been able to pay any of my bills. There was also the fact that it was a good paying job with really good benefits. And that was the problem. And I knew that if I went to, because I occasionally looked, on Indeed for a few other jobs to see what was out there. None of them paid anywhere near what I needed in order to live my life. And I didn't live extravagantly. I just had bills, your everyday bills. So in order to keep the lights on, I had to keep that job. There wasn't another option.
It felt like that's it. Like it's a necessary evil. It is the thing that I need and the thing that I don't want more than anything. That's a hard
Mhm.
crossroads to live at.
Yeah.
So what happened? What was the moment that took you off of this course and changed your life?
There, yeah, absolutely. There are a few things. First off, in November of 2018, I spontaneously got migraines. I'd never had one before. And I got one that didn't end until February of the following year.
It
Yeah.
it
I
lasted a whole year?
started November 12th. No,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
Started November 12th, ended mid to late February of 2019. So 2018 to 2019. So it lasted for about 4 months.
Okay.
Um, there was one day I remember where I wasn't in massive pain. Um, so that happened. And then I also broke my foot quite badly. And at, it was my right foot, so I wasn't able to drive anymore. Thankfully, it was right before Christmas. So I was able to, take a few days off for Christmas. And my mom was in town, so she was able to like drive me around where I needed to go. Um, but then Christmas ended and I had to go back to work. And about 2 or 3 days into that, I was like, I just can't do that. I don't have the capacity to keep trying to get rides and figuring things out all the time. And I don't feel comfortable getting an Uber. I don't have the money to get an Uber all the time. So I looked into getting a leave of absence just for the duration of not being able to drive. I was like 6 weeks. That's all I need.
So you were injured and you were like, I cannot work right now because I'm injured and I have to take care of myself.
Yeah. It was
Fair enough.
more, oddly enough, it was more I'm injured and I can't get to work. I have a transportation issue. And because of that transportation issue, I can't get to work. So I need to take a leave of absence. But I also remember being at the hospital with my broken foot because we went to the ER and thinking, I wish my mom would leave the room so that I could tell them that I'm suicidal because I didn't want my mom to know. And she didn't leave the room because like she's my mom and
Yeah.
talking to me and filling me hours in the ER. So I kept that to myself.
Yeah.
And I don't remember exactly like when the leave of absence shifted, but it was somewhere because a lot of that time is really gone. Don't remember it well. There are like highlights here and there, and I remember it overall, but I don't remember specifics of that time because I was just so in a shell that I
Yeah.
was not consciously aware, like looking back, consciously aware of it.
You were disassociating and pulling yourself out of your body because it was just too painful to
Yeah,
experience life at that period.
exactly. So at some point during that 6 week leave of absence, I was like, yeah, this is good.
Not working is great. This is helping.
But yeah, not working is helping, not being in that environment. Like, even though my foot hurts, yes, even though I can't like go anywhere, not like I'm having like joy rides or anything. I'm literally like sitting here icing my foot, 8 hours a day. But sometime at that point, I was like, okay, things are a little bit better. So maybe I need to talk about getting help. And maybe I need to extend this. And maybe I need to be honest with my family so I can get the support I need.
Wow.
Yeah. So like I said, my work had really good benefits. So I called them up and was like, hey, I need to extend my leave of absence. And they're like, that's fine, give us the paperwork. And I said, I also need some sort of, because I know a lot of jobs do this. They have like the number of counseling sessions you can get for as part of your insurance. So I was like, I need the people who are part of the provided caregivers so that I can talk to someone and get the paperwork filled out.
Yeah.
So they provided that. And by like mid-January, I started therapy, and I kept in therapy for years.
Congratulations. Congratulations. That's a hard step for a lot of people to take, to admit. And it seems like from what I hear is like there was a part of you that just really desperately wanted help. Like that part where you speak about sitting in that hospital. It breaks my heart to know that telling someone that you were feeling suicidal in that moment was at the tip of your tongue and you weren't able to say it out loud. And that's fair. But I'm like watching a movie right now, screaming, "Oh, say it!" But you got help in a different way. You were able to get into therapy and advocate for
And
yourself.
my mom, I did tell her, and she was very open and very willing to help. And she took me to several of my therapy appointments because, again, I couldn't drive because I had a broken foot.
Yeah.
So she was completely there. I don't want it to seem like she wasn't. She was a major support through all of that. It was just, I wasn't ready to acknowledge it to myself that it was that bad at that point, but it really was bad well before that.
So did therapy help?
Yeah, so much. Yes, it got me to a place where I was able to recognize and handle the emotions. It also got me to a place where I was able to get the medication to start working. Because I really think that when you're in that deep, one or the other is not going to be your whole plan. You have to use them both. And it took so long for us to find the right things that would work, but the therapy helped me through that time of trying to figure out what would work, and also the different reactions of everything, because I had a lot of adverse reactions to things. So it got me from a place where I was self-harming every single day. I had to go to the hospital and turn myself in for suicidal thoughts twice. And the last one was the one that just snapped me out of all of it. It was like, you can't do this again. And I have it.
Can you tell me more about that moment? Do you remember?
Yeah. So this is really like, this is the pivot point, right?
We're hitting it now. This is the pivot point.
There's so much wind up to this point.
That happens to a lot of people is we hit that rock bottom before we can bounce back up, because it's so low and it is so painful and it is so hard that we're like, I will never allow myself to get to that point again. Yeah. It sounds like you're hitting that point now.
Yeah.
In your story.
May of 2019. I remember it's so weird how you remember like specific details. But May of 2019, I was parking my car and I kind of sideswiped the parked car next to me, and I was just inconsolable. I did not have the capacity to handle any of that at all. So called the insurance and was like, this is what happened, took pictures. And I was like, if I go in my house, bad things are going to happen.
Can I pause you there for just one moment? Because that is just that's what happens when people see people freaking out over something that you're like, that's so small. It's because they're operating so far out of that window of tolerance, because they're burnt out. Their nervous system is so fried and their emotions, their cup is so full that one little thing can just feel like the end of the world. So what you were experiencing, it wasn't because you're crazy. It's because your nervous system was fucked. Sorry.
Yeah.
You may now continue.
Yeah, you're totally right. My nervous system was 100% fucked. Like, completely. So I knew if I went back into my house, I would end my life. So I didn't go back into my house. And I went straight to the hospital because I didn't want to. Anytime I did anything, I didn't want to.
Yeah.
But I felt like I needed something, some sort of control. Every cut that I made, it was some control, some sort of release of endorphins. And so I went to the hospital. It was either the second or third time that I had been there for this thing. And this last time they were like, we need to keep you. You've been here a couple times. And if it had been your first time, maybe we'd let you go. But we need to keep you. Because I was fighting. Like, I got there and they were like, okay, we're going to keep you. And I was like, no, I'm good now. I'm good now. I can just go home. Because like that moment of peace, it dies down and you're good, but it only dies down for so long. And then you'll stub your toe and it's going to boil over again. So they recognized that was happening, thankfully. And they sent me to a different facility because they don't have it in the hospital. They sent me to a different facility for 72-hour hold.
Yeah, I want to hear what that experience is like. Like what happens when you go to the hospital to turn yourself in because you're at risk of suicide? What is that process like?
So for the hospital that I went to specifically, because I don't know if it's handled the same way elsewhere, but I was talked to by a nurse and a doctor, and then they called the on-call psychologist, and cause it was later, it was after business hours at that point. So they called in someone, and I spoke to her on like an iPad on a stand because she wasn't like in there in person. Because she was just on call. So she was sitting in her home at her office or whatever it was, and she's on an iPad. It was so hilarious and ridiculous. And she's, talking, and she's got these lists of questions or whatever. And she's like, yeah, we're going to keep you. And I remember being so mad. I was so pissed off. I did not want to stay. I was ready to go home, and they were keeping me. I thought, because when you say that you're going to kill yourself, they take away everything. They take your clothes away and put you in a gown. They take any kind of jewelry that you have on, anything that could potentially be used to harm yourself.
Right. That makes sense.
I somehow kept my phone. I guess they said that they normally took that away, but I somehow kept it. I don't remember how. Maybe I had it in a pocket or something and they didn't realize that I had it. But it was good because I needed to call a friend and be like, hey, you need to get my dog. You need to let her out in the morning because I'm stuck here. So she was thankfully totally able to take care of the dog and the cat for me for those 3 days. But after that, because it wasn't in facility in that hospital, I had to wait for an ambulance to take me to the other place. And I remember it was 5 hours of waiting.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Because it's not emergent. You're in a safe place. They're going to send the ambulance to wherever the emergency is. So you just have to wait until one becomes available. And you have to wait for a bed to be open at the other place. So there was a lot of time just waiting for something to happen. So I was waiting, and I remember while I was doing that, they had kept the door open. I'm not sure if that's procedure or what, or if they she's not a flight risk, but I remember thinking, okay, well, I don't have any clothes on, but if I wrap my blanket around me and over my head, because I have blue hair, if I wrap my blanket around me and over my head, maybe I can get out, but then I don't have my keys. So how am I going to get home? Well, it's not that far. Maybe I can just walk.
So you're planning a great escape from the hospital right now?
Planning a great escape, yes. Because I'm I do not want to be on a 72-hour hold. That is absolutely not what I want.
Why were you so against?
What I went there to do.
Yeah, why were you so against it?
I don't know. I did not have rational thoughts at that point. There was no rationale behind it. I think it was because I had calmed down enough to be okay. I was like, I'm not a risk. Like if I go home right now, I'm gonna make dinner and then I'm gonna walk the dog and then I'm gonna be fine. Like just let me go. I'm fine.
So
And then
perhaps
they
maybe
didn't let
this,
me go.
well, yeah, well, like it sounds to me, and tell me if this resonates, but it sounds to me like that 72-hour hold, when they said that, it meant that someone else was recognizing that you weren't okay. And if other
Yeah.
people knew you weren't okay, that must have been scary too, because you couldn't
I think
pretend.
I can relate to that a little bit.
I can be off. You can tell me, or you can say no. I'm going to reflect what I think, but you can say you're wrong.
No, not at all. I think there is a little bit of truth to that, but I think I was also looking for recognition,
Mm.
and recognizing that it was that bad. But I was also, I'm not comfortable in general with like big changes and being like away from, I was worried about my pet. I was worried about, I have an eating disorder that is not like anorexia, bulimia. It's like hard to explain. Look up ARFID, avoidant restrictive intake disorder. So it's kind of like picky eating, but it's like to the 1000th degree. So I was worried about what I was going to eat. I was worried about what I was going to wear because I didn't want to be without a bra of all things. And I wasn't allowed clothes, and I was told like when you go, you're not allowed clothes, and I was like, I don't want to be in Alaska now for 3 days around
Mhm.
all of these different people. So there are 3,000 things that just flash in your mind that could go wrong. And I was worried about like insurance and coverage, and if the ambulance is going to be covered, because you hear ambulance rides are like $3,000. So there are all of these little things that go through your mind while you're waiting. So you're like, okay, all of these things are bad. And if I just don't have to do this, then none of that's a problem anymore. So, but I didn't have a choice. I didn't, I didn't escape. I didn't try to escape because it also felt like there's too much risk of actually not making it.
Mhm. Yeah.
I didn't have shoes either. So like there was no way I was
You're
gonna
not
get
going
anywhere.
anywhere.
No, no. So yeah, they ended up, the ambulance comes. I was honestly a total bitch to them. I was like a grumpy child, like a toddler saying, no, I'm not going, kind of a thing, because that was my defense mechanism at the time.
Mhm.
And I get there, and it was not a good experience because of the eating disorder. I was pretty much immediately told, we are not catering to your dietary needs. And I was like, well, it's not like I'm vegetarian. I have an actual diagnosed eating disorder.
Yeah.
What?
And
So I
they
got
were
there.
completely inflexible.
Yeah, 100%. I had to call my psychiatrist and tell them what was going on. And they called the facility and they were like, no, you have to get her food. It's
We love
not,
the
yes,
psychiatrist.
yes. She advocated for me
Oh,
so much there. And I sincerely thank her for that.
sounds like a good
Because
one.
without her, I wouldn't have eaten for 3 days.
Mhm.
Um, so, and it's not like you don't get any treatment while you're there. You see a doctor every day, and the doctor basically is assessing whether or not you're still a risk to yourself and whether or not your hold needs to be extended.
So it's not even a psychiatrist that's making that judgment. It's a
Um,
medical practitioner.
Sorry, he is a psychiatrist.
Okay. Was there
No.
group work? Was there like group spaces with group therapy?
So this is another thing that was really bad about this particular experience. They didn't have enough staff to have two different wards for the people who are on mandatory holds from the court for addiction and
Oh.
people who are on mandatory holds for mental health. So we were all lumped into one, and we had one group therapy session, and you didn't have to go to it. So I'm in this facility, and I didn't know at the time that I didn't have to go. So I go to this meeting because I was like, well, everybody's going. Not everyone's going, but it looks like they were. And I get into this meeting and they're talking about drugs and alcohol and all of this stuff. They're not talking about mental health at all. And I ended up leaving halfway through. I don't even think it was halfway through, but yeah, I left. I was like, this does not pertain to me at all. I'm opting out.
And yet we know that this pivotal moment, this 72-hour hold, was the moment you decided you were going to make a change.
Yeah. I didn't want to have to experience that facility ever again.
So it wasn't that the facility, the facility didn't help you with the mental health. They were just so horrible that you were like, well, I don't want to be here again because this sucks. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Sometimes it is the most ridiculous things, but that experience, that 72 hours, was like, this is complete and utter bullshit. I'm not here to get better. I am here to literally exist for 72 more hours. That is the whole point of this.
Wow.
So it may not be the same at different places, but this is the way that it was at where I was at.
And what did you feel called to do after that moment or in that moment? Did this aha, I need to do something for myself, I need to heal, was that while you were at the facility or after you left the facility?
That took a little while longer afterward.
Okay.
So I knew that I didn't want to go there ever again. And I knew that in order to not get there again, I had to not be suicidal. In order to not be suicidal, I had to stop self-harming. In order to stop self-harming, I had to tell myself, I don't actually want to self-harm anymore, because there was definitely a point where I was like, yeah, I just want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant that I needed to invest more in myself, in therapy. And that snowballed everything to getting better. And that also meant it was around that time that I accepted you can't go back to that job, because if you do, the cycle is going to start all over again. So I started aggressively looking for other jobs, because my leave of absence was also coming up for renewal, and you're not getting paid that much anymore. So I had to start finding something else. And I went on a few interviews, and none of them paid what I needed to. And none of them went particularly well, because I was lying through my teeth about I was masking. I was being a totally different person. I was going to ask. So I didn't get any of those. And then the time came where I needed to go back to work, and I had to get a different position at my work, because I knew I could be in that position. So I was like, yeah, I still need to get paid. So
you need to lessen the workload, lessen the stress that you would have to carry while in that environment. Yeah.
So I took a part-time position within the company that was in the mailroom. So I wasn't even opening letters, because they have a machine that does that for you. So I was just pulling the stuff out, unfolding it, putting it on a scanner. And I did that for 28 hours a week. Yeah.
Oh my, I hope you had some good podcasts or something playing in the background, or music.
I was listening to so many audiobooks. Like,
nice.
Just constantly audiobooks.
You have to, otherwise you'll just die of boredom doing something like that for 28 hours.
Yes, it was horrible.
But what I'm hearing, like when you say like you're out, you're hustling, you're looking for these jobs, but you're still masking. So you're still operating from a place of fear and lack of self-worth, and you're going for similar positions, similar kind of environments to what you were currently working, because that's what you knew. That's what you knew how to do. That's where
it's not so much. Okay. I didn't look for positions that were lifeline because that's what I knew. I looked at them because that's all I was qualified for.
And if you are listening, we did some bunny ears, qualified for. Yeah.
Because once you're in customer service, you're only ever qualified for doing more customer service. So I had to look for customer service jobs in call centers, because that's all I had experience in. And at that point, once I realized that that was what was going on and that I wasn't getting any callback for anything else, I happened upon an Instagram ad for a copywriting, excuse me. I happened upon an Instagram ad for a copywriting course, and I had always wanted to write for a living. It's a major passion of mine to write. And I took the course. And I did the course in about 3 weeks because I had nothing else to do. And come 4 years later, I am a business coach for copywriters and other freelancers. I'm able to be 1000% myself every single day, all day long. I don't have to mask anymore. I don't have to worry about what other people say, or that I'm not, that I'm too smart, or that I'm thinking too much. I am just welcomed into this space where I belong. I don't have to fit in. I just belong.
I'm so happy to hear that. At what point did you quit and go off on your own?
It was actually right after the pandemic.
Hey, the pandemic was a great reset for a lot of people,
Yeah.
reevaluating their values and how they want to show up in this world.
Yeah. So being in the mailroom of this company, I was an essential employee. So I couldn't, and you had to be physically there. So there was no way to get distance. And of course, it was like March of 2020. So we didn't know how it was spread. Like we didn't know anything.
It's still too early. Yeah.
Yeah. So over the next couple of months, we learned more, and they were not taking appropriate precautions almost at all. So we had like 3 separate workstations where they were attempting to keep us separate, but we all entered through the same door at the same time. So it was kind of pointless.
Yeah.
And then we all used the same bathroom. We all used the same lunchroom. So what was the point of all of that? We weren't required to wear masks. And that started giving me panic attacks because I was really worried about getting sick.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was something that killed you, right?
Yes.
Like that's all the information we had. We're talking like May or March through June of 2020. We had very little information at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So it was June of 2020, May of 2020, I got 3 clients. I made $2,000, and I was like, okay, these are retainers, and I now have some sort of flow going and can get clients. So I'm going to quit. And on June of 26th of 2020, I emailed my boss and I quit.
What did it feel to press send on that email?
Oh, I cried tears of joy. I jumped up and down. I celebrated. I'm feeling it right now too.
Yeah.
There's just this lightness, this feeling that things are coming up from your soul and expanding into the world, and they are full of joy and happiness and excitement and everything good.
I'm so happy to hear that. And even as we start to move into where you're at now, again, your energy is shifting, and that vibrancy that we saw at the start of this interview is coming back out. And you can tell how connected you are to this work and how much happier you are now. I'm so happy to hear that. Sometimes when we navigate changes, it makes us question who we are and our place in this world. And for me, for example, stepping out as a freelancer and a businesswoman has made me question my intelligence, because for so much of my life, I saw myself as stupid, because that is the mask I wore to fit into spaces, because I was this bubbly, energetic person. And for some reason that translated to people as unintelligent. Oh, she's naive. She's sweet. She's cute. She's dumb. And so I just saw myself as stupid for so much of my life. And as I embark as an entrepreneur and a freelancer, it challenges that core belief I have for myself. And I now have to step into this identity of I am intelligent. I am capable. I am someone who's worthy of respect. Like there's so much of my identity that gets challenged. And I'm wondering if your identity has switched or been challenged in this transition from customer service to business boss woman, helping other business boss women do the business boss thing.
I'm so sorry that was your experience. That sucks.
It sucked. It does. But you know what? It got me to where I'm at now, and I'm happy how I navigated through it.
Yeah,
Life is hard.
Yeah.
Life is so hard. And no one teaches us in school how to think for ourselves.
No.
You're taught how to fit into the mold that society has created, and it's created for one specific person.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think the entrepreneurship necessarily was the switch of identity because I had done so much of that with the therapy that I had done while I was on the leave of absence. So it was kind of like in college, I was me, I was myself. I got into this job and I had to retreat into a shell. I stayed in another job and another job and another job where I was in a shell. I was able to come out, peek my head out a little bit, but not too much. And then I broke and the shell eventually just cracked open throughout those times of therapy. And once I got to, I guess it had fissures through the therapy. And then once I got to the entrepreneurial side, I was like, I can just be myself.
Yeah.
And a coach, actually, the first coach I ever hired, she noticed that I was being this like business persona person when I was in my business. And she was like, you can just drop that, right? Like, you don't have to be, I always do this like hand motion where I'm like pulling a suit jacket together, buttoning it up, because that's what I felt like I had to be, because that's what I had thought I had to be. And she just said, like, take that jacket off, be yourself. And since then, it took a little while to make that change. But since then, I'm just like, I am me. I am going to cuss like a trucker on calls as long as people are okay with it. I am going to have vibrantly colored hair. I am going to speak my mind, share my opinions, be 100% transparent, because that's who I am. I'm a completely open person. Ask me pretty much any question and I am going to just tell you. And my mom used to say that I was going to be fired for my bluntness, and I came close a few times. I can be as blunt as I want to be. My title is No BS Business Coach for a reason.
You say it like it is.
Person. Yes. And I get to be that person. And if you don't want to work with me because of that, that is okay. Find another coach, because there are people who do want to work with me for that.
100%. And not every one person is made to coach every person. If you can coach everyone, then you should not be coaching, because we're not built to coach everyone. We're not. Yeah. You have taken us through a total rebirth. Like, your pivot truly changed your life. And I'm so happy that you are still here with us to share this journey and to share your message. What are you hoping that our listeners take away from your story today?
So first, I want you to know that it is okay. And this phrase has been going out for a while. It's okay to not be okay. Just embrace that, acknowledge it. And even though there is a stigma, that is breaking every day through all of the hard work that people are doing with their struggles with mental health and being open about it. So even if your family doesn't want to acknowledge it, even if your friends don't want to acknowledge it, even if your workplace is not at a place where they even want to be open to the idea that you need a break, take it. Just take it. Because if you don't, your pot is going to boil, simmer over. And at that point, it's over. You're done. And the world needs you. Even if it may not feel like it, the world needs you. So stay, fight, and stay.
Thank you so much, Kelly, for being here and sharing your story and your message. It has truly touched my heart, and I'm sure that there are people listening who needed to hear this today. So thank you again. And if someone is listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, I need to learn from this woman, how can people connect and work with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Dogstar Creative Co. You can find my website, same thing, dogstarcreativeco.com.
Amazing. And I will have those links below in the show notes so that you guys don't need to go hunting for Kelly. She is just right there. Just go down and click the link. Very, very easy. Kelly, I hope we stay in touch. I'm loving our connection. I'm definitely going to have to go follow you on Instagram myself because I just want to keep learning from you and seeing you on your journey. So again, thank you so much.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and letting us know your thoughts in the comments below. It truly means the world to me to hear from you. New episodes will be available every Saturday, both on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you would like to learn more about my work as a coach, today's guest, or have a story that you would like to share on the Pivot Point, check out the episode description for more information. Now, time for the legal stuff. This podcast is presented to you solely for educational and entertainment purposes. I may be a professionally certified coach myself, but hosting a podcast is not coaching. This podcast should not be used in substitution of working with a licensed therapist, doctor, coach, or other qualified professionals. Copy that? Amazing. See you on the next episode. Nothing but love, Jess.